Here are the instructions for how to use the BFLY. Here's the screen on the phone once it's launched. A few things to point out here. Well, the screen, the depth, it's all the usual stuff. The indicator is to screen left or patient right. Presets, freeze button. A couple of things you won't need to use or don't want you to use. Mode, you're always going to use B mode, of course. This is for recording images. The legal eagles from the hospital have asked us not to record any images because BFLY has a cloud and they're concerned about that. Once they figure it out, we might change those instructions, but don't hold your breath. It's a legal thing, of course. So that's your basic tour of the screen. If you hit presets, it'll bring you to this screen, and then you can scroll up and down and select the preset you want to use. Once you select the preset, then you click select and it'll bring you back to the regular screen. Sometimes if you haven't used the probe for 30 seconds, or if you turn the probe back on or something like that, it might bring up an auto freeze feature here. It's just to save battery. All you do is touch the snowflake and you'll be able to scan again. To increase or decrease the gain or increase or decrease the depth, it's just a swipe of the finger. So you place your finger in the middle of the screen and swipe in whichever way you want to increase or decrease depth. For depth, you slide your finger either up or down, depending on if you want to increase or decrease the depth. And you'll see what you've changed the depth setting here, and you'll also know by the hash marks as usual. Okay. If instead you want to change the gain, you don't slide your finger up and down, you slide it side to side. And you can see here that the gain was just changed, so it's showing you what the new gain level is. Now, if you also want to change not just the overall gain, but the time gain compensation or the gain at different levels, different depths on the screen, what you do at this point is touch TGC over here, and the screen will change to this, and then you can slide left or right each of these slider buttons or knobs, left or right, depending on if you want to increase or decrease the gain in the top third of the screen, middle third of the screen, or bottom third of the screen. And then when you're done, you click done, and it'll bring you back to the regular screen. If you select the cardiac preset, the machine is going to default to echocardiography orientation. That means that the indicator will go from screen left to screen right. All you need to do to change it back to clinical orientation, which is what the vast majority of us use, you'll tap the B right there and it'll toggle over to the other side of the screen. If you don't want to increase or decrease the depth, but feel you need to zoom into an object, it's not one finger you would use a finger and a thumb, and you would just do the pinch and zoom thing, and you can see up here where the area on the screen you're zooming in on. We won't have to use that too often. When you're working with a probe and the phone or screen through the ultrasound probe cover, it could be a bit cumbersome and you might get a bit clumsy and hit buttons you didn't intend to hit. For instance, you might inadvertently hit the record button. That will bring you to this screen. To get back to the previous screen, just hit cancel. If, on the other hand, you hit this button on the top right with the blue box, which is where the archives live, you'll be brought to a screen that looks like this. In order to get back to the usual screen, just hit this left-hand arrow on the top left of the screen, and you'll be brought back to where you want to be. If you want to measure a structure, such as the aorta, for instance, what you want to do is tap the freeze button, the snowflake right here. Of course, that'll freeze the image, and it'll change the buttons that you see on the bottom. You'll want to tap the button right here with the upper and lowercase a, and that will change the buttons and give you some other buttons. To measure, what you want to then do is touch this button right here, and that will bring up a line with these blue dots on either side. And what you want to do then is move the dots. Crosshairs will come up, and you want to move, of course, the crosshairs to one side and then the other crosshair to the other side of the structure you want to measure. And the measurement will appear right here at the bottom of the screen. Okay? When you're done, you hit the freeze button to unfreeze the image. One other thing to note is that before you go in the patient's room, after you've prepared the probe, you want to adjust whatever settings you can before you go into the room. You can see that it's a bit more cumbersome to use the touch screen, touch various buttons, adjust settings with a plastic wrap from the probe cover. So go ahead and adjust all the settings you can before going into the room to reduce how many times you have to adjust settings once you're in the room and scanning the patient.